This episode is another very special look behind the scene of What's Your Heaven. My co-writer, Samantha Rose, who has written with me on all 4 of my books, joins me to talk about our process in writing together, how the books are an opportunity for us to grow and learn as well, and the signs and synchronicities that we've received throughout this process to validate the messages in this new book. So, Samantha, this is so much fun. I love that you agreed to be a part of the podcast. You know, I mean, we've done 4 books now, and you are equally as important a part of this writing process as I am. You know, and so I wanted to introduce you to my audience, and I get so many questions all the time on, how we work together and what it was like writing this. So I thought, we could just kind of open up and just talk about whatever comes up and really, most importantly, the inspiration behind this book, because this book.
It's fun to think about all the books that we've done and even how it all just came to be in the beginning. You are my first ghostwriting client, which I think is really ironic since we're writing about dead people.
It's very appropriate.
And I've learned so much over the 4 books, and I love them all, but I really love this one, I think, because it felt so resonant to what was going on in my life and your life. And how many times did we say, like, God, we're writing this book for ourselves?
Yes, that is always the case. We write this book as much, if not more, for ourselves than for the readers, because it has to be authentic. And so if we can authentically say, like, we have been tested and put all of the good information to use, then, this is all part of our work as the messengers.
I agree. You said you want to talk about my move story. When I was writing, so in the middle of this book, which we had not a lot of time to write, so we were on a fast track, and I knew how much I had to write every week to stay on deadline. And out of nowhere, I had to move. I had to move out of my house, and I had to move out of my office, and I was freaking out. And it was just when I had started the chapter on I Am Surrounded, which is all about calling on your team spirit and trusting and having faith and all these ideas that I've written about for you in all your books. And I thought, okay, this is really funny. Okay, I have nothing to lose. I have to just trust that it's going to work out. And stop trying to control every detail and anticipating what's going to happen, because I worried about finishing the book on time, right? I didn't have time to pack a whole house and an office and all this. And so I remember that first day finding out, walking through my house saying, okay, team spirit, let's do this.
And they did. They delivered.
Totally.
Right? I know. Well, and again, it builds our own authentic faith when we can say this stuff works, but you have to do the work. You have to invite spirit in. You have to suspend doubt long enough, open up to believe, and then, do your part, and then let go and let spirit show up and bring it together.
And it's hard. I mean, I've written these words over and over for you, and they're beautiful words, and I like saying them and I like thinking them, but putting them into practice is a challenge. But I will say it really paid off, because it all came together for that specific moment. And I ended up in a better house, and I have this new office that I love, and we finished the book on time. And it did reinforce what we were writing at the time.
100%. It did. And, so this book, let's back up, because this book, do you remember, like 2 years before I went and pitched it to the houses, it was a manifesting abundance book. right? And well, that was all wonderful. It wasn't the book Spirit wanted us to write. And we just couldn't get it together. And we just didn't feel inspired to, pull the trigger, to write the treatment. And then fast forward, like life happened. I don't remember. I just know everything I do has to be authentic and organically inspired. It cannot be forced. And so it was a year later that I had.
I wrote so many different versions of the book proposal, and we were kind of coached to go in a certain direction because of what the market was saying and what was popular. And we tried, and then you and I would get back on the phone and be like, not really feeling it. It just feels too light. There's just something else, right?
Exactly. It's so amazing. You and I are, again, just the messengers. Spirit writes with and through us. And it is a team effort. And okay. And so I want to share the story. I don't know if you remember this, but so we got really excited because, I got this great idea from Spirit combined with Chris's experience with his father. And we brought all this together, and you and I and my agent, E04, put our heads together, and we created this amazing book proposal. So I then fly to New York City, and I met with 4 different houses. I was very excited about all of them. And there was one meeting, though, ironically, even though I was in New York because of COVID, it was over Zoom. I was like down the street from them, but online. And this house, which happened to be Harper Wave, the imprint of HarperCollins, Harper Wave. And I just felt it when I was connecting. There were 4 ladies on the call, and I just knew this is the house. Well, I went on to do a group reading, a mini demonstration of, what I do. And in that reading, I channeled a spirit named Tony. And Tony was the head of the house. It was one of her dear friends. And I said, I get an Anthony. He died by suicide. I believe it was a hanging, strangling my neck. And again, frame of reference, unfortunately, I have that frame of reference with my dad. And I saw that. And she said, yes, Anthony or Tony was one of my clients. I did his books, and I didn't know who this man was. Okay. I just knew it was a powerful, moving connection for the whole team. Okay. So I'm done with my meetings. I get on an airplane. Overhead, I hear the song Calling All Angels. Okay. And I knew that's one of my signs from my team and Spirit saying, like, you showed up, good job. It's in God's hands, whatever needs to happen here. I then sit down for my 4-hour flight back to Denver. And I'm looking through the movies to watch. And one of them was the Anthony Bourdain documentary. So of 100 free movies, I picked that one. Okay. I'm watching it. Halfway through the movie, the woman I just met with, Karen, the head of the house, was being interviewed as one of his closest, dearest friends and colleagues because she wrote all of Anthony Bourdain's books.
I don't remember that story.
Oh my God. I was so blown away. I'm like, oh, that was the house. I felt it. I knew it. And I thanked Anthony and Spirit. I thanked my dad. I thanked my guides. And then sure enough, it was a few weeks later, we landed on that house. So that was definitely, Spirit working behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, one of the coolest things that happens when I write for you, which doesn't happen with anybody else. Well, first of all, I've not written 4 books with anyone except for you. But I need complete focused quiet to write. Some people can write with noise. I'm really, really sensitive to noise. But every time I write for you, I can listen to music. I don't know. Well, you're going to tell me probably in a second why. But it's become just, I expect it now that when I'm writing, the music that's playing, because I'll put Spotify on random, so I don't know what's coming up. And so often what I'm writing is then echoed by a song. Like if song doesn't come on and then I'm inspired, I will be writing like a chapter head or a sentence or something specific, and a song will come up almost with like an identical lyric. it happens all the time when I'm writing books for you, and never any other time. And so that's always my validation, like that, yes, okay, I'm writing the right thing. It's all, it's so cool. In fact, right before this call, I was listening on random and some song came on talking about heaven.
Wow. Of course it did.
I know.
Well, so, my theory on that is that you have attuned yourself to be a vessel, a channel through which spirit will work with and through. You show up and do your part, and then you make space for spirit to do its part. So as you're writing, you're synced up or in alignment with your higher self. And when you're in that higher place, your vibration is higher. So you attract miracles.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why it happens. And, it can happen maybe, and hopefully for all your clients, it's just setting the intention to invite in that co-creative process with your higher self and your guides.
Mm-hmm. I think it's because of the subject matter too, that my mind is in a higher place, or my mind is maybe out of the picture. I mean, I'm using my mind to craft, but I am able to just open up in a different way. Yeah, it's really cool. I love it.
I love that.
Sometimes I don't remember that I've written, like I've told you for this book, because we'd had so many, I went back and reread all of them, which I had not done. And just because I didn't want to we didn't want to replicate
be redundant,
yeah. Done, right. And now I'm losing my train of thought on that, but I can't remember.
You went back, you reread the books to make sure that we were not being redundant.
Oh, right. That's what it is. And they sound pretty good.
They sound really good, right?
But also there were passages where I thought, God, that's pretty good, but I don't really remember writing that. But I think part of it is that I am in this sort of other mind when I'm writing.
Absolutely. You get into a zone. And that's like what happens when I do readings. That's why I don't remember my readings. When people are like, oh, you read me a year ago, do you remember? No, I actually don't even remember yesterday, let alone what I brought through a year or more ago. Because when it doesn't matter if you're doing readings, you're a writer, whatever you do, and you get into that zone, in a sense, aligning with your higher self and this higher energy, you're fully present. And, so anyways, I think it's a testament to the co-creative process that you're doing. And I love it. And one of the things I love so much about you is that, what people don't know is you were a journalist years before you and I got matched up. And that was, a whole other story. And that was synchronicity bringing us together. But you bring such a healthy balance of like playing devil's advocate and keeping it really grounded and real in this world,
Mm-hmm.
So making sure that it doesn't become too woo-woo.
Mm-hmm. Well, remember, that's how it was for the first book, that I think one of the things that you liked about me was that I had healthy skepticism. Like I was open, but I'd never talked to a medium before. I'd never had a reading. And so a lot of how that book ended up being formatted with a lot of the questions, like, hold on, like, what are you saying here, was really because that's how I was processing the information as I was writing it. It's like, okay, I am the reader. I don't get what you're talking about here because I had not been introduced to any of it yet. Right. So we wrote it in that way, which I think, that book I think is still really popular because it speaks to people like me who are curious, but they need to just back it up and explain it a couple times and then once, now on book 4, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally get all that.
You're pro.
Contract stuff.
It's true. Well, you've opened yourself, like you're a full, I won't speak for you, but I believe you're a full believer because you've had your own authentic experiences to deepen your faith and trust Is that true?
It is true. I've learned so much from you, and I've put it to the test, and it's been many years now. When we first started working together, I think I said to you, well, I don't know any dead people. I had not lost anyone significant. And since then I have. And I'm so grateful for what I've come to learn and believe working with you, because it's made the grieving process a bit, it's not easy, but it's given me a perspective that I maybe wouldn't have had, that makes, it's just softened it a little bit, or it's created an opening for me to believe that there is a connection with people who I've lost. So I've changed a lot since writing Spirited. What year was that? 2000.
We started 2009. Yeah. It's amazing. Well, anyone you come together with, you have a soul contract, a soul plan. They're part of your soul plan or life story. And clearly you and I, that is the case. And I'm just so deeply grateful because, while I have this amazing connection and information that comes to and through me each and every day, and so many amazing stories over 24 years, I'm not a writer. That is not my gift. That's your craft. And together, we're the 1-2 punch. We're able to bring both of our unique skill set and talent, and you create this amazing conversational style and you put it into a readable narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so the question I get all the time is like, well, how do you guys do this? And, how we do it, I get a download of content. And so we'll either get on a call and talk it out, or I email it to you. Mm-hmm. And then you'll take all of that. And then we'll go back and forth with, you putting it into something. Does this feel right? Does this resonate? Did I get this right? And so that's, in a sense, the process.
Mm-hmm. I think in a way, I don't want to overstep here, but I think you're a channel, clearly, but I have learned how to channel you. As a ghostwriter, that is what you need to do. I always write in first person. So I have to get out of myself and hear you and channel your words. It's more like your intention and the heart of what you want to say that I have to attach to, and then I can put words to it. Certainly the books are intended to sound like you, but we've worked together so long now that I am able to get into your voice faster. Mm-hmm. I've tried to explain how this weird job I have works. You probably can relate. And I'm not exactly sure how it works, except it does. And I think because I rely so much on listening and just hearing, maybe that's why I hear songs in that way. I'm probably clairaudient. My son calls it photographic ear.
Oh, funny. He's not incorrect.
I can hear things. I can hear how people say things and maybe what they mean in between the words. And then it just gets stuck in there, and I'm able to then put it on the page.
Yeah, you intuit.
Mm-hmm.
You do. What you and I do, it's very similar, and I've never thought of it that way. But I'm a voice for spirit, and I'm reading between the lines. It doesn't come in sentences. It comes in energy impressions of thoughts and feelings and playing the game of charades. And you're doing the same with your client, in this case, me. Mm-hmm. And you're using your intuition and you're listening for what's not being said and feeling into it, and then channeling that onto the paper.
Yeah. And it's amazing to me when people like yourself are able to let me do it. I think you put a lot of trust in me to write for you. And so far it's worked out, but it's a sort of a magical collaboration when I think about it.
It is. You can't be a control freak, and that I am not. I'm not a details person. I work well in partnership. I think we both do. That's our Enneagram 9. We're the same Enneagram.
And
Which
just found out this year.
I know. It's so funny. It's like that could either like really work well or really backfire. And it's really worked well for us.
It works. It works.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's pretty amazing. And for me, and I know for you, so many times we would get on our weekly call and we'd talk about the miracles, the signs that were showing up as a result. And I remember writing this chapter on I am worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And that I'm putting myself out there when I put my work out there. I am, in a sense, airing my dirty laundry, but I do it to keep it real, to be authentic, to remind people that I'm no more different. We're all going through life. We all have our lessons. I'm not immune to it because I have this ability. And I'm writing about my worthiness issues, and I'm feeling very vulnerable. And I remember it was after a day of being on a call with you. I then went to my shaman energy healer, Celeste, who does body work and energy work. She's a little different than Jackie in that sense. And she picked right up on it. Everything you and I had just talked about on the call, she was downloading. And I was like, that's amazing. She's like, I'm reading your energy. And she said, and you're feeling very vulnerable. And you want to shrink down and crawl in a hole. That is also that shadow side of my Enneagram 9. And she said, no, your guides are saying, she said, in fact, you have a guide. It's a jaguar, a black jaguar. I said, that is my guide. That was my guide from 24 years ago when I first was introduced to my guardian angel and my grandma babe. It was the black jaguar guide.
Oh, I don't know that one.
So he has recently come back. He came back to me about a year ago. I don't talk about this with anybody.
Work him into book 5.
Yeah. And so she said, it's a jaguar. And I said, 100% it is. She said, he is here to protect you, to be fierce and to stop shrinking down and hiding. It's okay. There's strength and vulnerability, that whole message. Rise up, shine, be the example for everyone else who's walking this path of being brave and confronting their life lessons and doing their work. So I left there so deeply grateful and in awe. And as I'm driving home, and I have a picture, maybe we can attach it to this podcast, I end up behind a truck with this giant sticker on it of a black jaguar.
Ooh.
I mean, it took up the entire back side of the truck. And it was in my face. And so, of course, I believe, but I was so in awe of the timing and spirit saying, Rebecca, this is not about you. Get past yourself. Okay. Get out of your ego. Put this work out there. People need this. And that is exactly what you and I have done. We've gotten out of our own ways and we've allowed spirit to work with and through us to bring through what I believe to be very important information at this time.
I agree. My son brought home, they celebrated Valentine's Day on Friday, and his teacher gave out like these little heart trinkets to all the kids that she'd made. And they said, I am worthy.
Wow.
Which I think is not like a typical Valentine message, right?
No.
I was like, where'd you get that? And he told me, and I'm like, that's so cool. He's like, whatever. I'm like, I want it.
Maybe he was a messenger and it was meant for you.
That's true. It's for me.
That is really amazing. Yeah. Well, I know there's been so many amazing signs. And so I'm just so grateful that not only do we get to create this for others, but we created this for ourselves as well.
Mm-hmm. I loved coming up. Well, in the beginning, we were I don't know how much we're going to give away about the book, but we were going to talk about soul lessons, and it evolved like it always evolves. And And then at some point we decided to break it down into 7 lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm always looking for ways to like, you know, I'm looking for ways to format it too, in ways that make sense. So like, how can all the chapters align and things like that? And so it made sense to do whatever, 7 lessons, but then it was like, what are the lessons? And, remember in the beginning, we had like a whole list.
Yeah.
And then we were able in talking to distill them, but you were also getting information through your readings that was informing this. So every time we got on a call, I'd say, well, what are you getting?
Yeah. It was amazing. I know.
And I am worthy was one that kept coming up in your readings.
It did.
Right.
It still does.
Yeah. It's it's the big one, right? Well, they're all big, but I think you were saying and that it comes up more than any other.
You know, there's about 30 or so lessons that I hear when I'm working with people on what they're working on. And usually we're working on anywhere from 2 to 5 lessons, okay, in any one lifetime. And the biggest one is self-love, self-worth, hands down. And I do believe it's in part because we are divine sparks. You know, the first lesson is I am connected. And I am connected is all about, we are all a spark of the divine. We all have the God, goddess within ourselves. That's the I am presence, right? So we're all a chip off the old block. And so we also have an ego. And so when we get disconnected, we're not connected. We forget that we are divine, that we are perfectly imperfect. We are enough just as we are, right? And I think our ego goes into competition and comparison, and we start to think, well, I'm not smart enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not thin enough. And all those I'm not enoughs go back to I'm not worthy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so who doesn't struggle with that from time to time? And I think the biggest key takeaway is when you are connected, when you know and you embody that you are connected and you take the time each day to plug in and claim your worth, then you feel enough. And then you can check that lesson off your to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
Easier said than done.
I know. Takes a lifetime sometimes, right?
It does.
Well, I think people understand or the idea of self-love and self-care, and we've gotten better at practicing that. But the idea of worthiness is a little different. I mean, they're tangled up together, but I think for me, what hit home was if I am spirit and I am connected and I am supposed to be here and I set up lessons to learn, I am worthy of enjoying my life. I am worthy of acceptance. I am worthy of, all the things that we want others to experience, our children. But we often don't give that gift to ourselves because we think, I don't know that lesson, I'm still digesting it. I catch myself thinking, well, of course that person deserves that, but I don't. Well, why wouldn't I? I'm worthy just as much as anybody else. So I think we hadn't introduced that one before, at least in those terms.
Right. Well, and the fact that it still triggers you is an indication that it's a lesson you're still working on.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about this in the book. Whatever is unresolved or unsettling and still triggering is a clue that could be one of the important lessons you are here to learn.
Right. I think you said that when I was working, there were a couple chapters, right, where I was struggling. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I hate this chapter. Or I can't get through it. I couldn't get my arms around it. And it was because of that, because it was so personal.
Exactly. I know the whole book was so personal. So this book was like a pregnancy. I mean, it's definitely the length of one, if not longer. And you go through all the mixed emotions. And I call it a labor of love because that's exactly what it was.
There are times when I'm in it where I just think, why am I doing this? I should just go get a job at Starbucks. Like, why do I have this job? And every project is like that. There's a point where I'm like, I'm never doing this again. And then when it's done, it's just like, it is like a pregnancy. Like, of course I'm going to have another baby. Of course I'm going to do this again. Look at this thing. It's beautiful.
Do you remember with our first book, Spirited, we literally handed in the final manuscript on the day I gave birth to Sam Rosen?
Yes.
And the reason we ended up on the name Sam, part of it was because you're Samantha Rose, Sam Rose. And I'm like, I gave birth to Spirited, my first book. I gave birth to Sam Rosen on the exact same day.
That was nuts.
It was amazing. I love that.
I love that too. But did you really give birth? Yeah, it was
literally. Right. I literally was giving birth that morning that you said. I emailed it. I turned it in.
We did. So we birthed them both the same
We
day.
did. And you did not know because it wasn't the due date. So it was pretty magical.
Well, book 3 was even crazier because that book started out as something totally different. Remember? And then for those who've read the book know that, I mean, you got pregnant. You weren't expecting to.
No.
And all of a sudden you were saying, we need to work this into the narrative. And I'm thinking, oh, for God's sake, I've already started on this thing. How am I supposed to work this in? But then it became this very personal, day in the life that was chronicling what was happening to you. And it was unbelievable. I mean, it was happening as your witness. I was getting the phone calls and I was getting the emails with these crazy stories of what was happening to you. And that book was written through your pregnancy.
Yes. And the book we're referring to is What the Dead Have Taught Me About Living Well. Yes. Every book has been magical and special in its own way. They're all so very different. But with all of them, it is so much bigger than us. We are just small pawns being used in this game of life here to, share with others whatever it is Spirit wants to share. And it's very humbling. And I felt so grateful to have you as my partner in this.
Me too. And even though I said I'd never do this again, I would write another book.
Yeah, but let's take a break.
Right.
I need a breather, man. Let's focus on this one for a minute. No, I agree. It's such a beautiful experience. When you write a book, it's like taking on another job. And the way we do it, we really pour our heart and soul into it and try and make it the best creation that we possibly can.
Yeah.
I'm feeling very proud of What's Your Heaven.
Me too. I'm excited, and it's going to be here before we know it.
It is. It already is. It's out for pre-sale. And just to remind listeners, the book walks you through a process of figuring out what your top life lessons are. But I also created on my website for free. You can go to my website and take a quiz that walks you through a series of questions that you can also use to help you identify your top lessons. So there's different ways, and some people don't need any of it. They know what their lessons are. And you can just pick up the book and go straight into working on healing, fully understanding and healing those lessons.
I would encourage people to do it because I think we're often surprised by what we need to work on. I know I have been. And I love how in this book, I mean, there's universal lessons, right? That we're all here to learn, but that specifically, there are specific things for each one of us to learn that maybe someone else doesn't need to learn as deeply. That was really interesting to me. And it seems really clear now to me what mine are. So go ahead.
Yeah. And, you recognize the patterns you keep repeating, the behaviors, that whether it was yours to learn from unhealed karma from another lifetime that you brought into this one, or intergenerational homework, the spiritual hand-me-downs from your ancestors that let's say in my family, it's mental health issues, mental illness, and that has been passed down. And my brothers and I are here to change the narrative and to do it differently. And so we all have those, whether it's individual and or soul group, lessons that we are here to work through. And that's all part of the Earth School experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've said to that too, that was really interesting, that piece of the intergenerational lesson. And I think that might feel relieving to some people to understand that maybe something they're struggling with isn't just theirs necessarily, that it's something that people have struggled with down the line. It's part of their lineage. And that doesn't mean it has to continue to be a struggle, but that it's deeply rooted back generations, perhaps.
Exactly.
But that we are being presented with an opportunity to finally learn it,
To learn it and to heal it. And you're healing generations in the past and generations, it's healing forward, healing your future generations to come. So it's pretty amazing. And we'll leave the rest for listeners to read. So what I talk about in the book, the book is called What's Your Heaven? And the idea is bringing your heaven to earth now, instead of waiting until you cross over and die to experience it. And heaven it's not a place, it's a feeling, or it's a state of being. And it can become a way of life right here, right now. And we reach heaven through those good feelings, right? So the feelings of contentment and love and peace and joy, all those positive emotions on that scale of consciousness, which I include in the book. Or you can create a living hell, right? Anxiety and stress and greed, competition, fear, and so forth. And so I would ask you, Sam, what's your heaven?
Well, I've thought about that, and there's a little taqueria in Austin, Texas, where I used to live, and I visit every summer. And it's the first place I go when I get off the plane. And I always say when I walk in the door, oh, this is my heaven on earth. And I thought, well, I mean, it's a nice place to go, but like, why is that my heaven? And then I thought about, it's because as soon as I walk in there, I feel relief. It's like it's summer break. It feels easy. It feels like a homecoming. I usually run into people I know. And so it is the feeling. I mean, it's the margaritas, but it's
the feelings of the margaritas.
It's the feeling of, I feel home there, and I don't feel stressed. So when you say that heaven is the feeling of freedom and relief and joy, then I understand. That's why I always say that that's my heaven on earth. There are other places, but that's one of them.
I love that. Chris and I just escaped to Costa Rica. I got back late last night for 3 days for our anniversary. And it was my Christmas gift, but he did it for our anniversary weekend. And so we ended up at this very sleepy, quiet beach resort. And you think you're going to a resort, you think the typical resort where it's loud and crazy, and we just both weren't in the mood. Like we've just come off a grind of a month. Okay. And we get to this resort and we start exploring it and walking the beach, and there is no one. We call it our mountaintop. And he looks at me and he says, I have a lot of rooms in my heaven, but he said, this is definitely one of the rooms in my heaven. And I agreed. And that I just had it was the feelings of complete at ease. It was, there was no frenetic energy. There was no loud noise. It was like salve for the soul. It was soothing. It was grounding. It was centering. It was calm. There was no one pulling on our energy. Nobody talking to us, asking. There wasn't even really service. Nobody was coming up and bugging you, right?
And it was, tell me where that is.
I will. It's amazing. It was so wonderful. Costa Rica is one of my new favorite heavens.
I haven't been. But we don't have to go on vacation. That's the whole point.
No, we don't. You can just walk out your front door and find your heaven. And again, it's not a place, it's a feeling. So for some people, it's going to be just calling a friend and catching up on the telephone call, or whatever your heaven is. You don't need resources. You're tapping into a feeling that's authentic and true for you, that brings you that sense of joy, relief, and peace.
And then you tell people how to do that, how to get, because it's not always easy for us to feel that way, to get in that energetic state. So that's part of the book too.
That is a big part of What's Your Heaven. So it's attainable, and we know it because you and I both, we can come in and out of our heavens, and it's, it's a process of doing the work, but that's why we're here in this Earth School experience. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Small Medium at Large. For more information about my offerings and events, and for additional resources on your spiritual journey, including my self-guided courses, books, and blog videos, please visit my website, RebeccaRosen.com. You can also follow me on social media by searching @Medium Rebecca Rosen on Facebook and Instagram. As always, wishing you brightest blessings and all love.